everybody, welcome back to Taji's World of Books and welcome to a midweek wrap. Hey you guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to do things a little bit different. I'm just going to do a midweek wrap up. I was sort of thinking how I wanted to organize the books that I read because they really don't fit into other categories. I was going to do books that didn't quite turn out the way that I had hoped that they would, but then there's one outlier that didn't quite fit into that category, so I'm just going to do a midweek wrap up and just do it like that. The other thing that I'm going to be doing differently than I have done in the past, several of you have asked me about steaminess level or steamy recommendations. And so what I'm going to do is now give each of the books a rating in terms of emotionality or angstiness of the book, their overall steaminess, how steamy and sexy the book was in the sexy times, and then the overall rating of the book. Because I think that that's going to really help you to categorize where you want to put this book and whether or not you want to move it up your TBR because it was just super hot and spicy. And so I think that's going to help everybody. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the first book that I want to talk about, and this is the one that didn't quite fit into the category with all the other books because this one was really, really good. So this is really tough. This is a military romance, and I've never read a military romance before. This is by Heather Orgeron and Katie Stewart. And so again, like I've never read a military romance, so I didn't know what to expect. And so this is about Katie, and Katie is a soldier, and she's also married to Gavin, and he is a soldier as well, and he is career military. So they met at a military bar. It was like under a dare type situation, and they have a 3-year-old son named Noah. Okay, so Katie is now being deployed, and she's being sent off to war. Okay, and she is being sent to, I believe she's going to like Afghanistan. So she's sent off to war. She's a medic and she's trained to be a nurse. And so ultimately her career she wants to get into is nursing. So she's going to be on base the whole time and basically tending to the sick as they are brought back from the front and need medical attention. So she really should be in no danger to see actual full-on like war, whatever, if that makes sense. Okay, so she is known as the Ice Queen because she's like a take no nonsense kind of person. She doesn't engage in the banter and the like antics that the other officers get into and the other soldiers get into, which is like sleeping with each other and doing all kinds of craziness. She's not known for that because she's married and she has a 3-year-old son. And so there are a group of other soldiers that she is quite close with, and they kind of like really bring her out of her shell. And one of those guys is named Briggs. And Briggs has this Texas twang. He's known as a ladies' man. He is like all jokes all the time. He's light, easy, fun. He's very likable, easy on the eyes. Like he's one of those like where it's like temptation is there for sure. But because she's so devoted and her relationship with Gavin is so loving and she loves him so much and she's so devoted to her son that it's like, no, like I'm like, where's this book going? Because like I don't even know what's going to happen here. So Katie and Briggs develop this relationship and they have a clear flirty banter going on because Briggs is that kind of flirty guy, but you're just like, I don't see where this is going to go. So she wants to see live action, and like I said, she's in a protected situation in that she is on base and her job doesn't put her in harm's way, but she wants to go on a mission. So Briggs says, you know what, you want to go on a mission, we'll take you on a live aid mission. That's like a humanitarian issue. There's never any mission, there's never any challenges or difficulties. It'll be fine. Like you can go with me on that. And so it's Briggs, it's Katie, and it's a couple of other, like her best friend and his best friend and a couple of other soldiers. There's like 6 of them that all go together. They go on this mission, on this aid, and the inevitable happens. They hit an IUD, a landmine. They are set upon by marauders. They are attacked, and multiple people in the party die, including his best friend. Katie is the one that has to kind of pull him out of the wreckage. And to make a long story short, they are accosted and taken hostage by the militant Afghanistan forces. And that's where the story ensues from there. And let me say this. This is really angsty, really emotional. Check out the trigger warnings. There are some things that you need to pay attention to. I don't want to go into great detail because I don't want to spoil it for you. This is absolutely heartbreaking. Everybody tries to do the right thing and it just doesn't work out in favor for anybody. And so let me say, I could give you more of this, but I'm not going to give you more because I want you to go into it relatively blind. I'm going to say for the angsty emotionality, it's a 5 out of 5 star. The steamy level of the book, I'm going to give it a 2. But it doesn't even matter because it is so good and so emotional. And overall, I gave this book a rating of a 5. It is really heartbreaking, but amazing and breathtaking and daunting and all of those things. It gives you all the feels and you were there for every moment of this. Now, there is a lot of conversation around alcoholism. There's a lot of conversation around trauma. There's a lot of conversation around grief and depression and loss and love and decisions and challenges and feeling like no matter what you do, nothing is right and nor will it ever be. And it's heartbreaking, but it's so, so good. It really is a good book. And I am happy that I read it. Like I said, I've never read a military romance and this delivered in so, so many ways. So if you haven't checked out Heartbreak Warfare, you absolutely should. It is definitely worth it. Okay, so the next book that I read was The Last Guard, and this is by Nalini Singh, and this is the sixth or seventh book in the spin-off of the Psy Changeling series. So this is an ongoing story about, and so if you know this world, just really briefly, there are Psy, there are Changeling, and there are humans. Changeling are like shapeshifters. You can change into like a leopard. You can have wolves. You have, deer. They have all different types of changelings. And they're a race of people that live in packs and communes, and they have the bear changelings. I really love them. And so you have an alpha, and then you have the rest of the pack, and they rule the pack, and they sort of live off to the side. You have the Psy, which are these automatonic, robotic people that are dialed into this, think of the Matrix, like a Matrix-like system that helps to keep the world in balance. And Psy basically operate at a level where they don't really have loving emotional relationships and they barely take care of themselves. They have these protein drinks that they are scheduled to drink at a certain time that have a perfect caloric balance that you drink, you take it, and it's for nutrients, and that's it. You don't eat for enjoyment. That just doesn't happen. Just like you don't have sex just for enjoyment. You have procreation contracts that you develop with another high Psy, family, and once you develop this contract, it's for a set amount of time. It's to procreate. It's to make sure that the best genes come together to create the best possible offspring. And if there's any mutation whatsoever, then the contract is null and void. So if you have any mental health issues, if you have any physical issues, this is considered damaged and you're considered not to be okay. And then obviously you have the basic human. So this is obviously, in a futuristic society that's like, like in 2323 or like 24, whatever, what life will be like for people where computers and automation really is reigning supreme. So, read the backstory of the Psy Changeling. So if you know the Psy Changeling story, then this book makes a lot of sense. So this is about Payo Rayo. She is a Psy, and she's considered what's to be an anchor. And an anchor is a new sort of designation in that it's not a new designation. Anchors have been around since the Psy net was created, but anchors they basically are not thought of because they are anchoring the net. They are basically what holds down the fort to ensure that the net does not disintegrate on itself. And that's absolutely what's happening because a very powerful anchor has died, and that part of the net that really connects everything together and ensures life is working and operating correctly is now disintegrating and falling apart. And then you have Kanto Merkin is another powerful anchor, and so this is about two Psy coming together. And so the book is absolutely what you would expect it to be. It's very slow going and there's not a lot that happens, but Psy are really like very antisocial, almost agoraphobic, afraid to come out of their shell and operate in a very automaton way, right? And so this is how these two Psy that are basically breaking out of their silence and really starting to come to terms with what they feel operate. So this is a friends to lovers, a childhood friends to lovers. They've known each other since childhood. This book also discusses mental health issues because Pyle has been designated as having mental health issues, and then Kanto has he's in a wheelchair, and so that's really interesting, the way that they brought those things together. The thing that I really loved about this book is I was bored through Kanto and Pyle's relationship because it's two sides that have no emotionality, and they just communicated in odd ways, and I just didn't get it, and maybe I'm too disconnected from this world that I read all the other books in the Psy Changeling world, and I really loved them, but the Psy are not for me. The part of the book that I really loved is when we got to see the bear community, because the bears are like, they're in Russia. There's this little baby bear named Dima, and Dima just kind of rolls in his bear fur, and then he shifts a boy that's running around. And bears, like, think of it as like have no boundaries. They're gonna come in and give you big bear hugs, and they have big parties, and they eat a lot of food, and they're like Russian, and like, they're drinking vodka, and they're loud, and they're just so gregarious, and you just can't help but smile around the changeling, because the changelings are everything that you would expect. It's all about community, it's all about family, and they're like, the bears like come rolling in, because Kanto lives on the outskirts of, and he's a merchant, and his sister is mated to the bear alpha, and so because he's on the outskirts, they've really taken him into their community and see him as one of the bears, and they just come rolling up in his house whenever they want, and he's like, of course, because they're bears. Like, bears don't have respect for any kind of, and Psy are so regimented, and so it's such a juxtaposition, but that was like the refreshing breath of air in this book. So this series is continuing. I probably will not continue. I think I've moved past this type of book, and I just wasn't really into it. So overall, the spiciness rating was a 1. I think you got like one scene of sexy time almost towards the end of the book. I was just like, I'm bored to tears. I can't take this. It was not emotional at all. Like, I feel like this book was written by a Psy, so I gave it a 1 for angsty and emotionality. It was just nothing. And then overall, like, I gave it a 3, and I think that that's generous, honestly. I have read other books in these series, and it was more about the changeling population and the shapeshifters, and I absolutely love those books, but this one just didn't do it for me. I feel like she's writing in this world out of obligation, as opposed to she has a true passion for it, Nalini Singh. I could be wrong, but this just was not for me. So then the next book that I read, which I was really, really anticipating, and this is Christine Feehan's Dark Tarot. This is book number 31 in her Dark series about the Carpathians. This is about Sandhu, who is an old vampire from the Carpathian Mountains. And so if you've read this story, basically the backstory is that you have Carpathians and you have vampires. Carpathians are an old race of beings that survive basically once they connect with their mate, they see no color, their life is dull and muted, and when they're born into this world, their mate takes the light and holds of their soul and holds it until they come together, and they are the dark. And so they basically basically existing until they come together and the light is combined with the dark, and they become one whole being. And so for those that decide to go over to the dark side, or those that decide to take a life, or those that decide to live on blood, those become vampires. And so that is a vampire. So a Carpathian is a very different being than a vampire is, basically. And so we have seen the progression of the Carpathians finding that not only can their mates be other Carpathian beings, ancient beings, but their mates can also be psychic human women. And so many have found that they connect with other humans that are psychic, and that is their life mate. And this is the case for Sandhu and Andalacia. And Sandhu is sitting on a mountain, and he is contemplating meeting the dawn, because he's so ancient and so old and so disconnected from the modern day reality that he just feels like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm not going to continue to just live like this because I just don't get it. And as he's sitting on this mountain, this psychic connects with him, and she hears his thoughts, and she basically talks him off the ledge and helps him to see that there is more to life. And he slowly begins to realize that this is his mate. And he follows through this psychic connection, her voice, and finds her. And he discovers that colors are restored, that, everything goes from light to dark, and he realizes, like, you are my mate, and it is my job to keep you safe at all costs, and I will do that come hell or high water. Now, Shandu is a gentle giant. He is like a huge being, and when he presents himself, you know, Alacia knows that he is the mate. She is a very strong psychic. She is a tarot card reader. She keeps the cards very close to her, and the cards have told her that he is coming to her and that she has a mission that's a dangerous mission that she has to go on with him, and that it is going to be dangerous and perilous, and she might not and he might not survive, but they have to do it for the greater good of mankind. What I liked about this book is that as they go on this journey to discover what this malevolent entity is that's trying to destroy them, it really takes the path, every chapter takes the path of the tarot cards. So you start with the Fool, because it's a journey, right? The Fool, and all the way through the major arcana. And as you are on this journey and going through this path, we find that we are meeting all the previous couples from, most of the previous couples from all the other books. So you're seeing Lucien and Jackson, Andre and Tegan, Gabriel and Francesca, you're seeing Dominic and Solange, you know, so all the different families and different factions. So it's really a progression and a journey. And each time they meet with these other couples, you see how they're doing, you see if they've had children, you see where their life has progressed, and you also get advice from them about what the next steps that Sandhu and Andalisha should take. Now, it's also interesting that there are 4 other ancients that are with them on this journey, and those 4 ancients, Benedict, Petru, Siv, and Niku, that have come from the monastery. And the monastery is basically a place where Carpathians go when they are so disconnected and so old, and they are very close to the edge of converting over to be a vampire. And if they do that, it is dangerous for everybody, because they're so powerful that once, if they converted, it would mean the destruction of all. So they're very, very close to that. So these 4 ancients have decided to help Sandhu, who left the monastery to find her. They decided they're going to embark on this journey with them and protect them and help them. And so while they're on the journey, they ask Andalisha, can she do card readings for them to see if they're going to find their mate? And each of the 4 of them get confirmation that they are going to find their mate. They just have to hang in there, and she basically points them in the right direction. And so this like kind of sets it up for like where the remaining 4 books are going to go. So this book overall, like, it was good, but at the same time I was a little bit bored. Maybe I'm a little bit disconnected from this world as well, not sure. So in terms of emotional, it wasn't very emotional, no angst, so I gave it a 1. And in terms of spiciness, I've seen her write better, so this is a 2. And then overall rating, I gave it a 3. And again, maybe I'm disconnected from the world. She writes these books in a way that you don't really have to be, you know, so connected to the world, but I think I would have understood a lot more and felt a lot more of what was going on if I had just come out of reading all the books and I read this one. Then I'd be like, oh, I remember who, you know, Jandu is, and I remember who this character is, and I remember what they went through, and I remember how Gary connects to all that, and I'm a little bit removed from that, so I wasn't there. So we'll see. I will try the next book that she writes to see how I do with it, and if I have the same experience, then I'm just going to say it's time for me to back out of this world. But overall, it is what it is. And then the last book that I want to talk about are these 2. These 2 are like novella lengths. This is the first book in the series is Filthy Vows, and then the second book is Twisted Marriage. This is by Alessandra Torre, and in this first book we find Elle and Easton, and they meet in college. It's about sorority sisters. The story sort of starts out with that they're having a threesome with another guy, and she sort of tells you like, and here's how I got into this mess. So you're sort of like, what is going on here? So it's told a little bit in a split timeline at the beginning, but then it moves you into the present day. And so what I like about this book is that it's a married couple that met in college, and it tells you how they met. But right now we're dealing with problems in their marriage. Easton, had a very prominent baseball career that he was embarking on, $12 million contract. They expected life was going to go in a certain way, and as a result of an injury, it does not work out, and they are having problems in their marriage, financial problems that are ensuing. She also is very fixated on having a baby, and you learn why she's fixated on having a baby, but that's where her thoughts are. And because he is not, they see it as he is not successful in giving her a baby, then they feel like he is failing as a husband. Easton feels this way. I don't think that Elle necessarily puts that pressure on him, but there is a lot of conversation about fantasies that she's having, and she really puts the reasoning that she's having these fantasies on the fact that she's taking these hormones to help her get pregnant. But I like that they really have conversations, strong conversations around what their expectations are, what the problems are, what they want. They really talk through their desires. They really talk about, you know, how she feels and what she wants and who she wants to do it with and what that feels comfortable like, and whether or not they're going to enter in a menage situation. Like, what really is that going to mean for them in the long term for their relationship, who they are to one another, and then if they embark on inviting a third person into their marriage, what can this ultimately do to their relationship? There's a strong friend group. The friends that she was friends with, that her sorority sisters in college, are still very much involved in their lives. They're still very close, and so it's a very interesting dynamic. It's a short read. Like I said, it's novella length, and so overall I think it's a great example of a solid couple that's together and that uses communication to help them work through their challenges. So I'm going to say that the emotionality for me, it wasn't very angsty. It was a 1 and the spiciness level is a 3, and the overall rating for this book is a 3. And then this is the wrap up to their story. So it's like Ellen Easton's story continued. This story kicked it up for sure with the spiciness rating. They're trying to resume normal behavior and normal life after making a decision to invite somebody into their relationship. And then what do they do from there? And how do they move forward? And whether or not this lifestyle is for them, and what they are looking like as a couple moving together, how they're communicating, what their needs and wants are. They look at pros and cons list. It's really a good example of a healthy dynamic and a healthy relationship while trying to spice up an existing marriage. So I thought that this was very well done. So I'm going to say overall the emotionality of this is a 2. This is a spiciness of a 4. There's some hot, sexy scenes in here. And then overall, I gave this a 4. And I think that this is just an example of a couple trying to figure it out. Like, it's not about us breaking up and get back together. And it's none of that. It's just that we are solid. We love each other. This is what we're deciding to do as a couple. What is that going to mean long term? Let's think about the pros and cons before we do this. And if we both are on the same page, then how do we move forward collectively in a way that makes the most sense? So I thought this was a great example. So overall, I think that this was a really good book. I will definitely read other books by Alessandra Torre, but if you are definitely interested in spicing up an existing marriage and want to see where that goes, then check this out. So you guys, that is all that I have for today. I hope that you like the new format of how we're doing this. Couple of housekeeping things. Remember, I have a community page set up, and on there I have a Q&A section. So I'd like you guys to go over and drop me a question that you'd like, because I'd love to pull that Q&A video together for you guys. And secondly, please hit that bell notification button, because it will notify you every time I upload a new video, which is generally Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And please do me a favor and hit that like bell, because that helps me with the YouTube algorithm, and comment and do all that kind of fun stuff. And that's all that I have for today. And I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Bye!